recording and shift this now to a full slideshow. Turn off my video, put this up the top. So we're just going to have a bit of a discussion today about eliciting language data or getting language data. And I think we're going to have to make this a 2-week session because I wasn't able to do as much preparation for today's discussion as I wanted. So I'm sorry for that, but we can at least have a discussion about the first part. So basically the post that I put up the other day mentioned the fact that we all know we have many smaller languages in Northeast India, and not just in Northeast India, in surrounding areas as well, but the Northeast is big enough for us to work on, as well as across the border in Burma. So already there's a connection there. And there's a lot of languages that need to be documented. And there's not enough time or enough linguists to do all the work. So we are losing people with significant skills in language to be able to do this work. We're losing the languages, at least. We're losing the speakers of the languages at a time that we need to record them, but we don't have enough people doing it. So what would be the priorities for collecting the basic information about a variety of languages? So I would say word lists are important, grammatical structures and paradigms are important, texts are important. Now, one thing that we need to talk about, and I haven't put enough information about this in today's talk either, because I am a little bit underprepared, but how are we going to write down the languages once we have even collected some of this information? So that is, if you like, transferring the sound recordings, which are now very easy to do. They weren't always, but they are now. But transferring those sound recordings into some kind of phonemic transcription, a transcription which captures the sound system of the language and captures the quality of those sounds. So I'm not going to get to talk about that because, as I say, today is going to be a relatively short discussion. So I just want to say a little bit about word lists. So we could start with the Calm C, a culturally appropriate lexico-statistical model for Southeast Asian languages. So Calm C, culturally appropriate lexico-statistical Southeast Asia. And this was created back in 1978 by Jim Matisoff. Many of you will be familiar with some of his publications, and there have been a lot of them, in which he looked at a set of words that would be useful for classifying the different languages that we find in the Sino-Tibetan family. So why is this classification important? Well, we need to know how different languages are connected with each other so that we need to know what needs to be researched. So let's imagine, for example, that there are a group of speakers of, let's say, Punjabi language who have migrated to another country. There are places in the United Kingdom where there are a lot of Punjabi speakers, just as an example. We might want to research Punjabi as it's spoken back in the Punjab, and we might also want to research it in England, where it might be a little different after 1 or 2 generations, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But if the aim is to record the world's linguistic diversity and to record all the different languages while we still can, the fact that we know that the Punjabi language spoken in England is the same language as the one spoken in the Punjab might mean that we don't need to do the same type of research. We don't need to collect the basic word list. We don't need to try and understand the basic grammar because that's already been done in the Punjab. So That's what the Kamsi list was created for, a way of quickly establishing which languages are related to each other. And this is the section on pronoun and kinship terms. And basically what Jim Matisoff did here was to take all of the reconstructed protoforms in what's called the STC, the Sino-Tibetan Conspectus, by Paul Benedict, I think 1971, and put words for which there was a protoform, put those words into this, and then we could check how these languages related. And you can see from some of these forms that there are some relationships to words that we know in Sino-Tibetan languages. So, for example, in Tangsa languages, it's quite useful to have mi as a word for person. Nang means you, thou, you singular, in Singpo. Ngai means you, ngai, means I in Singpo. Ksa is a child, which is pronounced sa in Mashang Tangsa, and se in Chulim Tangsa. So we can see that all of these words are related to the proposed Sino-Tibetan protoforms. But this list isn't going to document the language because it's only looking for those words which can be easily compared, and it's only looking to those words which we can find in all of those languages, and there's a lot of words missing there, right? We can't talk about human relationships with only those 6 words. So that's a reason then why we need to have some other words. So we could take the English kin terms. Now, while I'm saying this, going through this, you can be thinking about what are the words in Assamese that correspond to any of these. So in English, we have father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, grandfather, grandmother, uncle, aunt, and cousin. I think that's basically all of them. You can extend them in certain ways. You can create grandson, granddaughter, great-grandson, great-granddaughter, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, and so on. You can also, with cousins, you can make them second cousins and third cousins, and you can have what we say first cousin once removed, second cousin once removed, and so on. Actually, most people in Australia don't really know what those terms mean. But even with these words, and you already know from Assamese that there is not just one single word for uncle. So uncle is an English word that means the brother of your mother or your father. But there's not one word for that in Assamese. And in some languages, there can be as many as 4 different words for that. You can have father's elder brother, father's younger brother, mother's elder brother, mother's younger brother. Okay, so there's a lot of different possibilities. And this is the point I'm really wanting to make. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a case study, and it'll take us a few minutes to go through this. It's rather interesting, newly identified information. So this is words for grandparents and grandchildren in the Woiwurrung language, once spoken in the Melbourne area. And this is information which has been hidden in a museum archive for half a century, barely available for researchers to examine until quite recently. And we've been getting these manuscripts transcribed, and so we can now start to analyze it. Now, I won't show you what the original manuscript looks like, but we'll start off by seeing information that Barak, who was an elder of the tribe was called Wurundjeri or Wurundjeri, but their language is called Woiwurrung, what the elder who spoke the language, the information he gave. So he said, the father's father, Brengkurung, the father's mother, Malanja, the mother's mother, Gogok, and the mother's father, Nakap, something like that. Seems fairly straightforward. 4 words, 1 for each of the 4 grandparents. Now, so we'd say, okay, here we just don't have a single word for grandfather. We have a word that covers mother's father and father's father differently. No problem. But now look at this. Again, this information, the way it's presented in the original manuscript, is a little bit more complex, but essentially a female calls her daughter's children gogo. A female calls her son's children, whether those grandchildren are male or female, it doesn't matter, but her son's children, she calls them malanja. A male, on the other hand, calls his daughter's children ngakap, and a male calls his son's children brang. Now, you may have already noticed, and if we go back to the previous slide, and we will for a second, slide 5, the words, except for the father's father word, which is spelled slightly differently, breng, and has an additional kurung on the end, but the other words, malanja, gogok, and ngakap, are exactly the same. So if we look, for example, at the gogok, it means mother's mother, but it is also the word that a female uses to refer to her daughter's children. So there are 4 different words for grandchildren. And they depend not on the sex of the grandchild. That does not change it. It depends on the sex of the person who is the grandparent and the sex of the intermediate generation. So we'll just look at gogok. It can be defined in 2 ways, as mother's mother and as what a female calls her daughter's children. That is, the daughter's son and the daughter's daughter. Not all of her grandchildren, but only the children through her daughter. And that's what gogok means. So what's happening here? Well, the term is actually reciprocal. Think about your mother's mother. Okay, I'm not sure who's listening to this right now, so I don't know whether you're male or female, but it doesn't matter at the moment. Think about your mother's mother and what you call her, and then think about what relationship are you to your mother's mother? And the answer is, you are her daughter's child. So what's happening here is that the term is reciprocal. If you call her gogok, who does she call as gogok? The answer is you. Now, probably you haven't seen a system like this before, because I'm not sure that systems like this apply in the parts of India where we're talking. So actually the system's somewhat more complicated than that, but this is enough to demonstrate that there is not a one-to-one correspondence between words in English and words in other languages. Okay, that's as far as I got with this lecture, and what I'd like to do is to stop it here, to agree to finish this topic in a week, but just to talk through this discussion about the reciprocal kinship terms and what it means that there is not a one-to-one correspondence between word meanings in different languages. What it means is that we don't actually know what something is when we collect the word grandchild. So suppose, just going back to this, suppose someone spoke to a woman and asked in this Woiwurrung language, and asked her, what do you call your granddaughter? And the granddaughter is standing there, and that granddaughter is the daughter of her daughter. Well, the woman you are speaking to will answer gogok. And the person writing it down might think that is a general word for grandchild or even granddaughter. but they would be wrong, because gogok is only used by a woman, never by a man, by a woman to refer to her daughter's children. So there is a disconnection between the meaning of the English word and the meaning of the word in language. And that's going to be something that happens quite frequently. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.